Good morning, friends. I am coming to you live with my one-off Preptober video for those of you who are planning to dive in on the awesome NaNoWriMo event that takes place every year in November. NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. I know a number of you are doing this. A lot of authors do this just kind of as a quick refresh to get that book in a month done. But what I want to tell you about is how to prep for it. And this is not going to be about prepping your story because that is a whole other thing. And I would love to work on you more with that skill set. But today, I'm really just talking about setting your space. So let's say you decided today, October 31st, that yep, this is the year that I am fully intending to do my NaNoWriMo. And you're like, I don't even know how to get started. Like, you don't even know what it is to do to get going. I'm just going to give you a way to set up your physical space for creating the most success for yourself during NaNoWriMo. So if you haven't met me before, I go by Red. I am the president and head of creative of Red Writes Books. That is for my pen names, Jerry Shepard, Reggie LaBerge, Maggie McMahon. And I also have under that company a publishing imprint called Lucy's Lantern Literature. I'm a 27-year professional in the writing and publishing industry, 15-time #1 bestseller, multi-genre award-nominated author. And so I'm bringing to you my experience, and I hope to wrap this up with you in just about 10 minutes. So we really want to make this nice and short and sweet for you to be able to really dig in on your NaNoWriMo month. So with that said, let's get going. What is Preptober? Preptober is a sort of thing that happened naturally for all of those who had been doing NaNoWriMo for so long. It's about really getting set in that month before you write your novel to be able to hit November with success. A lot of times what that's really about is getting your world build done, getting your characters ready so that you're ready to dive in on your book. But let's pretend that you are going into November and you said, I didn't even do Preptober. I don't know how to get going. So I'm taking you from that place, and all throughout November, I'm going to be bringing you my book in a month plan, which is about if you have just decided, hey, I just want to write a book and I don't know the whole idea, or I don't have it all figured out, or maybe I have no idea at all. So let's set our space. And a lot of times when people think about setting their writing space, they are thinking about this perfect, beautiful set desk. If you've met most writers, our desks are not very neat at all. They're thinking about the ideal lighting, the cozy space. Maybe there's a fireplace in the background. They have their coffee and their cute puppy laying at their feet. And boy, do I wish it worked that way. That's not really what setting your writing space is all about. What it is about is three things, and I'm going to break these three things down for you. It's about your time, which has two different elements. It's about the sound, which has two different elements. And it is, yes, indeed, about some of that physical space, which also has two different elements. So let's start with time. One of the things that we have as Americans, especially definitely within Western culture, but really I kind of think on a global scale, is we think that if we don't have time to do everything, then therefore we don't have time to do anything. Think about that when it comes to the gym. How many of you are like, oh, I can't get in that hour-long workout, so therefore I'm not going to do that 15 minutes on the treadmill or that 15-minute weight workout. Instead of taking that 15 minutes and imagine how much those 15 minutes add up over time. The same is true of your writing. So let's talk about time. So there are two elements to time that work with your writing. So one is when you are most creative. So for me, I can tell you that my most creative hours are from 5 until 9 in the morning. I know I'm one of those crazy writers who's actually a morning bird instead of a night owl. I find that tends to be a little bit unique. I also have a friend who writes at lunch. They're like, you know what? This is when I can unplug from work for a little bit. They do a regular day job and then they write at lunch, and that's fine. Whatever is that time for you. But here's what I'm going to tell you what matters about that time. When is it that your creative juices are most flowing? Because here's the thing, there's work time And then there's creative time. So if I get up and I'm ready to write at 5 in the morning, but the first thing I do is open my email, or the first thing I do is start scrolling, or the first thing I do is start responding to people on my social media, I'm not I'm not using that creative time in a valuable way. And so when I get to that 5 to 9, if I'm like, you know what, from 5 to 9 is my most creative time, that means I'm going to take that time to dive into my writing. Otherwise, I've wasted it. And when I hit that 9 o'clock and the rest of the logistical juices start flowing in my head, I've now wasted that creative time when I could be most imaginative in what I am writing. So that's part one to time. Part two to time is what time block is most successful for you. So we all have a natural time, a block of time that we can work in. And in that time, if we go beyond it, we find our mind starting to wander. So for me, I can tell you, I have learned that my ideal time block is 110 minutes. It's not quite 2 hours, it's just short of 2 hours. And how I know that that time block is the end of my brain being able to think is that I start to go to scrolling, or I'm like, oh, hey, this is making me think. I squirrel. How many of you squirrel? So I squirrel after 110 minutes. So what do is instead set these 110-minute writing blocks. After 110 minutes, get up, walk outside, go check the mail, do a few push-ups, whatever it is to kind of like, okay, disconnect and then re-engage for another 110 writing blocks. So your time is about how you are spending that time that is most creative. It's about when, and it's about how long. So then let's talk about your space. Space is your actual physical space, and there are two things that I like you to think about when you do that. One, I'm sitting at my kitchen counter right now. I really like sitting at my kitchen counter in the morning, but the thing is, sometimes if I sit here to start writing and I'm thinking I'm just going to write for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden I'm in my 110-minute block, this is what happens to my shoulders over time. So what happens is when you start to get in pain, when you start to get tired, when you start to get stressed, when you start to get muscle tension, your quality of work is going to decrease as well, because your physical health matters to your mental, emotional, creative, spiritual health as well. So that's what part one of your space is. Make sure you're finding a space that you can be comfortable in. Make sure that you are writing comfortably. The second thing is, what are your surroundings? So what is your view? You might notice in the background here, even though it is Halloween, it has started to snow here in Wisconsin. I love looking at the snow. The other thing I love looking at is I love looking at the water. So anytime that I can see nature, I need to see nature in order to be inspired. I know some people who like to be in a completely dark room with nothing but the light over their keyboard. And you know what? If that's what inspires you, that's okay. Because it's nature for me does not mean it's nature for you. Some people also like to see other people, so that little stereotype of writing in a coffee shop might really work for them. So think about what it is you need to see to be inspired, and think about how you can maintain your comfort to be able to continue in your productivity. The last thing I want to talk about is sound. Some people prefer total silence. If I am in total silence, it is suffocating. I cannot be creative in total silence. Instead, I like to have music, but it can't be music I'm too into. So some of the things that I prefer are like those 1940s jazz tunes where it can kind of almost just become like soothing in the background. If I'm writing an action scene, I might put on a cinematic soundtrack, a non-lyrical cinematic soundtrack. So I want something that's instrumental. I also like, jazz. Some people like to listen to white noise sounds, so like the sound of rain. But if you like silence, go with silence. And the other part of sound is, do you or do you not want other voices or people around you? Again, this is one of those places where maybe a cafe really works for you. Sometimes I like that. Sometimes I'm like, if I'm writing a scene that has a lot of human activity in it, I'm going to want those humans around me because they're going to inspire the dialogue that I'm creating. So as you are getting ready to go into NaNoWriMo, you can join me all month long. We are going to be breaking down every single day a single lesson. I promise not to spend more than 10 minutes with you on a day. We have about 30 seconds left here. Again, I am Red with Red Writes Books. I hope you will continue to join me. Today, think about setting yourself up for success by creating your ideal working space before we start tomorrow. That's going to be your time. When do you want to write and for how long do you want to write? It's going to be your space. What do you want around you? What do you want to be able to see? And how are you going to be comfortable for productivity? And think about your sound. Do you want people around you? And do you or do you not want music? So think about these things. Set your ideal space. I hope you will join me all month long for NaNoWriMo. Thank you for joining me for Preptober. Have a great day.